created the static between us. "Hey, Rachel, just so you know, Veronica's coming to Christmas this year." His voice had that rehearsed casualness that made my stomach contract. "The thing is," Nathan continued, his words carefully measured, "the energy you bring from the hospital, it's just a lot for her. So maybe take a break this year. Nothing personal." "Quink, darling, we just want peace. You know how sensitive Veronica is to, well, energies? If you come, it could be uncomfortable." Then, with barely a pause, "If you show up, we may not open the door." The room tilted slightly as I stared at my suitcase, already packed for the trip I'd requested time off for months ago. The carefully chosen gifts waited beside it, each tag written in my neatest handwriting. 3 years of double shifts had hollowed me out, but I'd saved enough energy to be present for them. Now this, rejection delivered without pretense. "My name is Elena, I'm 42 and an adoption advocate. This is the story of how I made a man face the children he left behind. For years, I believed that giving enough, staying useful, showing up with homemade casseroles and unwavering composure would earn me a seat at the table. I thought being dependable made me indispensable. In my apartment that evening, with cinnamon-scented candles flickering and the thrift store Christmas tree I decorated alone, I finally recognized the pattern of my life. I was the practice run, as Dad used to say when I was 7, the test child who earned affection through usefulness. Meanwhile, Nathan, 5 years younger, was the miracle baby. When he skipped rent for his band, it was pursuing his passion. When I took extra hospital shifts to cover student loans, I was working too hard and missing out on life. He spray-painted an entire wall of the garage at 15. My parents called it artistic expression. 2 days later, I dropped a ceramic dish and received a 30-minute lecture on responsibility and wastefulness. When my medical school acceptance letter arrived, my mother glanced at it and said, "That's intense. Don't lose yourself in all that studying," then resumed chopping celery for a dinner, celebrating Nathan's new Instagram followers. But when Nathan dropped out of college for the 3rd time to launch a podcast about creative living, they hosted a welcome-back dinner with candles and expensive wine, balloons, custom cake, and a professionally framed photo of him holding a paintbrush now hung prominently in the hallway. The same house that never threw me a graduation party vibrated with pride for the son without a steady income. I once found my old sketchbook, filled with anatomical drawings I'd made throughout high school, in the recycling bin beneath takeout menus. When I asked about it, they shrugged, said they thought it was scrap paper. Maybe it was to them, maybe I was too. Still, I kept showing up, through med school, through 80-hour residency weeks, through shifts in rooms where most doctors didn't linger, rooms with fading photos and whispered regrets. That's why I chose geriatrics. I saw myself in those forgotten spaces, in people now only noticed when something broke. At home, I was the calm one, the helper, the invisible hand keeping the cracks from spreading. When their roof leaked last winter and insurance denied the claim, I paid $7,400 without mentioning it. When Nathan's freelance work dried up after 3 months, I transferred money without questions. When Mom's hip locked and her therapist stopped coming due to 3 missed payments, I coordinated everything. Because I loved them, or because I believed love was transactional, earned through sacrifice. They never said thank you. In their world, love wasn't spoken. It was assumed, like gravity. Every time I handed over a piece of myself, they took it blindly, never asking what it cost me. For years, I thought family meant being unseen but indispensable, like scaffolding, essential but never the focus. But that night, uninvited from Christmas, something snapped. Scaffolding isn't meant to bleed for the building it holds. I was done shrinking to make them comfortable. I moved deliberately, like folding chairs after an invisible funeral. I opened my laptop. The scheduled transfer for my parents' property tax canceled with 2 clicks. Nathan's monthly $800 emergency fund deposit, locked. Dad's car insurance I'd co-signed when his credit tanked, terminated. I wasn't angry, just done. Nathan once bought camera lenses he couldn't afford, then suddenly couldn't pay for Thanksgiving flights. I bought his ticket without hesitation. He hugged me at the gate, called me the best sister ever, and completely forgot by the following Wednesday. Just another favor I was never supposed to acknowledge. I was always one step ahead, a ghost in the machinery of their lives, fixing, covering, smoothing, never seen, but always necessary. They never said thank you. Maybe because gratitude makes it harder to keep leaning on someone. I told myself it was easier this way. Gratitude made you visible, and visible things could be judged. So, I disappeared behind their comfort, the hidden beam that never broke. Until now, after 13-hour hospital shifts, I'd wonder what it would feel like to be seen, not for what I could solve or pay for, just seen, not as scaffolding, but as Rachel. but wishes were for golden boys with Instagram followers, not girls with tax software. So I kept going. I brought homemade bread pudding every Christmas and smiled when they asked, "Who made this again?" When Nathan's rent fell short, I wired money silently. When my parents needed tax help, I stayed on the phone past midnight while my own taxes waited. I told myself, love meant showing up, solving everything. One day, if I carried enough weight, someone would see me under it. But that night, banished from Christmas for being too much, I knew better. They wouldn't see me because I had never asked them to. I had trained them not to. With snow falling beyond my window, I opened my banking app and hit cancel on the recurring payments. The $800 monthly mortgage supplement, gone. Emergency savings account, locked. No more surprise repairs or financial rescues. At first, it felt mechanical, just taps on a screen. But with every click, a strange stillness unfurled inside me. Not numbness, not bitterness, freedom. A bird stretching, realizing the cage door had been ajar this whole time. I made a list of the quiet debts I'd swallowed. The flights, the surgeries, the bounce checks, the emergencies patched without acknowledgement. The ink blurred from the weight of witnessing my own exhaustion. I wasn't angry, no matter how they'd spin it later. Rachel's being cold. I wasn't angry. People only notice the invisible when things fall. The missed mortgage wouldn't sting until the final notice came. The canceled fund wouldn't matter until pipes burst in January. Nathan's gigs would rise and fall, but no net beneath him now. No sister stitching it all with bank wires. I made no announcements. No dramatic exit. I unplugged the half-written Christmas message I'd drafted. Deleted it without hesitation. I unplugged the tree lights. I put the presents in the closet, their shiny paper suddenly ridiculous. I didn't cry. There was no room for sadness, just clarity. Love isn't an unpaid job. Family shouldn't feel like a subscription with hidden fees. I had spent decades trying to earn what should have been freely given. Silence is not love, and usefulness is not belonging. Across town, they laughed without me. For the first time, I let them build their celebration on the illusion where I was the problem, the heavy one, the complicated one, who never fit their sparkly holidays. For the first time, I didn't show up, and I reclaimed something I hadn't known I'd surrendered. Christmas morning arrived, soft and gray, Denver's skyline cloaked in fog. I sat by the window, wrapped in my favorite blanket, tea cradled in my hands. I didn't light the tree. I didn't play music. I didn't call. I simply was, quiet, whole, still. The untouched presents looked foreign now, like they belonged to someone who still believed effort guaranteed belonging. But there was no grief, no ache, just stillness, sacred stillness, like the breath after a scream, like air after a storm. I hadn't realized how much noise I'd carried until it vanished. Time passed differently that day. No calls, no kitchen clatter, no festive selfies, no Venmo requests, just silence. Evening came, and my phone buzzed 3 times. A message lit the screen. "Aunt Felicia, can you answer? You've done enough damage already." My fingers tightened around my mug. Damage? I hadn't even been there. I picked up her call, voice rough from disuse. "What happened?" "They're saying you ruined Christmas," she said, her voice lower than usual. "But Rachel, you weren't even there." Aunt Felicia had always been the only relative who kept in touch with me directly, not through my parents' filtered version of events. "How do you ruin something you weren't invited to?" she explained. Veronica had been admiring family photos and paused at one of me as a child. She said, "Wait, that's Dr. Rachel Jensen, isn't it?" Aunt Felicia nodded. "She's the one who sat with my neighbor through the night when no one else would. Saved her life." The air shifted. Nathan went pale. My mother's smile froze mid-sentence. Veronica looked around the room slowly and asked, "Wait, Rachel's your sister? The doctor you mentioned?" It turned out Veronica's grandmother had been my patient for 3 years at Denver Memorial, but since Nathan always referred to me as just my sister, without mentioning my profession, she never made the connection. Whatever they said was enough. Veronica gathered her things, thanked everyone with cutting politeness, and left within 15 minutes. By the time Aunt Felicia called, Veronica had posted something honest about families rewriting people to fit prettier stories, about silence as a form of erasure. For once, someone had noticed. Someone who saw me not as a burden, but as a human being. A doctor, a sister, a presence worth acknowledging. That night, I learned, sometimes the sharpest truth is the silence you leave behind. The next day came an email titled, "Let's reset things." It read like a corporate memo, signed jointly by everyone as if unity could overwrite fracture. No real apology, just talk about holiday stress and miscommunications. Buried halfway was the request. Could I reach out to Veronica? clarify things? Because Nathan's art career was at risk with her influential friends. It wasn't about me, just the mess my absence had left behind. I didn't reply. That night, the hospital administrator called. "Rachel, this is awkward, but I got a call from your father. He's worried about your emotional well-being, that you might need time off." My blood turned to ice. My father was using concern as a weapon, not because he believed it, but to control me. It didn't work. My record spoke for itself, but the message was clear. They weren't seeking reconciliation, they were seeking leverage. Next came a carefully orchestrated smear campaign, through texts to relatives. "Rachel's going through a tough time. She's isolating herself. No mention of Christmas. Just concern." Weaponized into control. I knew, because cousins I barely spoke to started forwarding me screenshots. Confused by the sudden family-wide concern, a cousin I hadn't spoken to in years messaged, "Hey love, if you need a yoga retreat, I've got a discount code." Each manipulation only sharpened my clarity. They weren't protecting me, they were protecting their narrative, where Nathan was the gifted heart, and I was the quiet utility. But I was done smoothing their story. The snow kept falling, erasing footprints of paths I'd taken to make myself smaller. For the first time, I felt no urge to correct the record, no need to defend myself, but it didn't end. In January, there was a knock at my door. I looked through the peephole. My mother, father, Nathan, bundled in winter coats, smiles stretched thin as tissue paper. I opened the door exactly 3 inches, enough to let cold air in, not enough to invite them. "We just want to talk," my mother said, gripping her purse like it held the right words. I didn't soften. I saw clearly. They weren't here for me. They wanted the old version, the one who believed love could be earned, the girl who folded herself smaller to fit into tiny spaces they offered. That girl didn't live here anymore. After a moment, I gave them one word. No. No speeches. No justifications. Just no. My mother's face cracked, shock spreading across her features, as if she couldn't fathom that the reliable scaffolding had finally crumbled, by choice. "But the mortgage payment," my father started. "The pipes burst yesterday," Nathan added, his voice tight. "And the car insurance." I closed the door quietly, not a slam, just a boundary. I locked it with steady hands. Outside, voices rose and fell, first pleading, then sharper. I didn't listen. I sat at my desk with my cold tea, letting silence wrap around me like something sacred. On my shelf sat the framed letter from Veronica. I looked at it and felt weightless. I'd spent years trying to mold myself into a daughter they could applaud, soaking up their neglect and turning it into fuel to keep showing up. I was never meant to be a mirror. I was something else, and maybe that was enough. They knocked again, softer. "Rachel, please, we just want to talk." I stayed seated, anchored by Veronica's letter. I let the knocking continue until it stopped. For the first time, I understood. Forgiveness doesn't always mean reopening the door. Sometimes it means choosing not to. Sometimes it means standing tall while those who fractured you exhaust themselves against your boundary. A wall of self-worth, not bitterness. Minutes passed. Then came retreating footsteps. Car doors, engine hum. They were gone. Not shattered, just denied. I watched their taillights fade into the snow-dusted street. I felt no pull to run after them, no desire to fix what they had broken. Only peace, real peace, the kind that settles when you stop begging for a seat at a table never set for you. Days passed gently. The silence felt like space I'd never been allowed to claim. I sat with patients whose families came with flowers, and with those whose rooms stayed empty except for machines and my presence. Then a package arrived. Inside was stationery from Veronica. She wrote about her grandmother, how she still practiced yoga at 83, still walked to the farmer's market every Saturday. She remembered when the world had started giving up on her, and how one doctor hadn't, who stayed past visiting hours, who treated her like a person, not a patient, a woman still worthy of dignity. She'd found my work address through the hospital directory, determined to reach me. "You didn't just save her life," she wrote. "You reminded her she was still living." I read it 3 times. That night I framed it. A reminder. I was never invisible, never too much, never a burden. I was exactly who I needed to be. Their inability to see that was never mine to carry. Weeks later, another email came, less polished, more desperate. "We miss you. Can we start over?" And buried near the end, the real reason. "Please ask Veronica to take down her post. Nathan's having trouble finding work. It's affecting his future." Not an apology, just another transaction they assumed I'd pay to keep peace. I didn't respond. Some doors, once closed, are meant to stay that way. not out of hate but self-respect. That evening, sunlight stretched across Veronica's letter on my wall. I closed my eyes and felt whole, not because someone told me I mattered, but because I had stopped asking for permission to believe it.